The Kreth Dominion controlled the Outer Rim with absolute authority. For 3 centuries their war fleet had never known defeat. Every species in the sector paid tribute. Every planet bowed to their rule. The Kreth believed they were untouchable, and for good reason. Their technology was superior. Their warriors were trained from birth. Their ships were the most powerful in known space. Fleet Commander Vekris sat in his command chair aboard Valen Station, a massive military installation that orbited the sector's primary trade hub. He was old by Kreth standards, with scales that had faded from bright crimson to a dull copper. He'd served in the fleet for 60 years and had seen countless battles. None had challenged him. None had even come close. The station hummed with routine activity. Patrol routes displayed across holographic screens in soft blue light. Supply ships docked and departed. Soldiers drilled in the training bays. Everything was exactly as it should be. Then an alarm shattered the routine. The sound was sharp and urgent. Every officer on the bridge turned toward the sensor station. Vekris felt his spine stiffen. That particular alarm hadn't sounded in his entire career. It meant only one thing: unknown hostile contact. "Commander, we have an unidentified vessel," his sensor officer reported, his voice tight with confusion. "It's massive. At least 3 kilometers long. And it's moving at speeds that should be impossible for its size." Vekris stood and moved to the sensor display. The numbers didn't make sense. A ship that large should move like a floating fortress, slow and deliberate. This thing was moving like a fighter craft. Fast, direct, purposeful. Where did it come from? Vekris demanded. The sensor officer worked his console, tracing the trajectory back through space. His face went pale. "Commander, the trajectory trace points to the human quarantine zone." The bridge went silent. Every Kreth officer knew about the quarantine zone. It was a forbidden sector, sealed off 200 years ago after the Galactic Council deemed humanity too dangerous, too unpredictable, too violent for civilized space. The Council had built a barrier around human territory and declared it off-limits. Anyone who entered never returned. Most species assumed humans had destroyed themselves. War was in their nature after all. Surely they couldn't have survived 2 centuries locked away with only themselves for company. "They should be extinct by now," Vekris muttered, though doubt crept into his voice. If this ship was human, they were far from extinct. He made a decision quickly. Dispatch 3 battlecruisers. Intercept that vessel. Issue standard warnings. If it doesn't respond, destroy it. 3 of the Dominion's finest warships broke formation and accelerated toward the unknown contact. Each battlecruiser was 600 meters long, armed with plasma cannons that could melt asteroids, protected by shields that could withstand planetary bombardment. They were more than enough to handle one ship, no matter how large. The battlecruisers reached weapons range and opened fire. Their cannons lit up space with brilliant orange light. Plasma bolts and kinetic rounds hammered the mysterious vessel's hull in a coordinated assault. For 30 seconds the attack continued. Any normal ship would have been disabled, if not destroyed. But when the weapons fire stopped, the human ship kept coming. Not even slowing down. Not a scratch. Not a dent. Its hull showed no damage at all. "Report." Vekris snapped. "No effect, Commander. Their armor? It's like nothing we've ever seen. Our weapons aren't penetrating." Before Vekris could respond, his communications officer called out. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission. Audio only. Source is the unknown vessel. Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled. Then a voice came through, speaking Galactic Standard with a rough, harsh accent that marked it unmistakably as human. It was a woman's voice, calm and cold. "This is UHSN Retribution, Captain Ellen Moss commanding. You have 47 minutes to evacuate all non-combatants from Valen Station. After that, we're coming through. This is your only warning." The channel closed abruptly. No negotiation. No explanation. Just a simple statement of fact delivered with absolute confidence. Vekris stared at the main view screen where the human ship now appeared. It was 3 kilometers of brutal, angular design. No curves. No elegance. Just sharp edges and what looked like hundreds of weapon ports covering every surface. It looked like it had been built for one purpose only: war. A countdown timer suddenly appeared on every screen throughout the station. 47 minutes. 46 minutes 59 seconds. 46 minutes 58 seconds. Vekris's claws tightened on the command console hard enough to leave scratches in the metal. His mind raced. Evacuate? Impossible. There were 50,000 beings on this station. You couldn't evacuate that many in 47 minutes even if you wanted to. And evacuate because one ship told him to? The Kreth Dominion didn't bow to threats. But that ship had taken fire from 3 battlecruisers and hadn't even noticed. Sound general quarters, Vecrus ordered, his voice steady despite the cold fear settling in his gut. Recall all patrol vessels. Activate all defensive systems. And send a priority alert to Dominion Command. Tell them we have a situation. Around him, officers rushed to execute his orders. The station's lights shifted to combat red. Alarms began sounding throughout the massive structure. Thousands of soldiers grabbed weapons and rushed to battle stations. The countdown continued. 45 minutes. 44 minutes. 43. The human ship kept coming, steady and unstoppable as a force of nature. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Vecrus wondered if the Kreth Dominion had finally met something they couldn't defeat. While his officers scrambled to mobilize the defense fleet, Vecrus locked himself in his private command chamber. He needed information. The restricted archives required his personal authorization to access, security measures that hadn't been used in decades. His claws moved across the console, entering old codes he'd memorized years ago but never expected to use. The files on humanity were buried deep. Classified. Sealed by order of the Galactic Council itself. As Vecrus read through the reports, he understood why. 200 years ago, humans had sent a diplomatic vessel into Kreth space. It was their first official contact with the Dominion. The ship carried 37 humans, including Ambassador Richard Blake, a man described in the reports as patient and eager for peaceful relations. They came with gifts and proposals for trade. They came with hope. A Kreth patrol intercepted them near the border worlds. The patrol commander was young, ambitious, looking to make a name for himself. He saw the human ship's defensive positioning and misread it completely. The humans had their shields up and weapons powered but not aimed. Standard procedure for any vessel entering unknown space. The Kreth commander saw it as preparation for attack. He didn't issue warnings. He didn't attempt communication. He simply opened fire and destroyed the human vessel in under 3 minutes. 37 humans died in the cold vacuum of space, their bodies never recovered, their ship reduced to scattered debris. The patrol commander reported it as a victory against potential aggressors. He received a commendation. The Kreth Dominion thought nothing more of it. They should have. They really should have. Humanity's response came exactly 3 weeks later. No diplomatic protests. No demands for explanations. No requests for reparations. They just came. 40 human warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Kreth space and started moving inward. They broadcast a single message on all frequencies: "You murdered our people. Now you answer for it." The war that followed lasted 3 months, but Vecrus read reports that suggested it could have been much shorter if humans had wanted. They fought with a fury the Kreth had never encountered. Every engagement was brutal. Every battle was decisive. Human ships didn't maneuver for advantage or seek tactical superiority. They just charged straight in and hammered their enemies into dust. The Kreth threw everything at them. Their finest battle groups. Their most experienced commanders. Their newest weapons. Nothing worked. Humans fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to prove. They took casualties but kept coming. They lost ships but kept fighting. One report described a damaged human cruiser ramming a Kreth carrier rather than retreat. Both ships were destroyed, but the humans considered it a victory. The Galactic Council intervened before humanity could push deeper into Kreth territory. But they didn't demand justice for the murdered diplomats. They didn't hold the Kreth accountable. Instead, they declared humanity too dangerous for civilized space. Too aggressive. Too violent. Too unpredictable. They built a barrier around human territory and sealed them in, cutting them off from the rest of the galaxy. The official reasoning was that humans would destroy themselves within a generation. War was clearly in their nature. Without external enemies, they'd turn on each other. Problem solved. The last line of the report made Vecrus's blood run cold. Recommendation: never provoke humanity again. If they ever escape containment, we may not survive the consequences. Vecrus closed the file and returned to the command bridge. His fleet was assembling. 47 warships, the largest defensive force ever gathered in this sector. Battlecruisers, destroyers, frigates, and support vessels formed a massive sphere around Valen Station. Every captain was experienced. Every crew was ready. Every weapon was charged and aimed at the approaching human ship. Surely no single vessel, regardless of its origin or capabilities, could challenge such overwhelming force. The math was simple. 47 ships against 1. The outcome was inevitable. The retribution arrived exactly on schedule, just as the countdown reached 0. It emerged from faster-than-light travel in a flash of distorted space, appearing exactly where their sensors predicted it would. The human ship was even more intimidating up close. 3 kilometers of angular brutality. Sharp edges that seemed designed to cut through space itself. Exposed weapons batteries covering every surface. Armored plating so thick you could see it from thousands of kilometers away. There was no elegance to its design. No artistic flourishes. Just pure brutal purpose. All ships, weapons free, Vecrus commanded, his voice steady. Open fire. 47 warships unleashed everything at once. The barrage was magnificent and terrible. Energy beams bright enough to blind unshielded eyes. Thousands of missiles trailing fire. Kinetic rounds moving at significant fractions of light speed. The combined firepower could have destroyed a small moon. It all struck the retribution simultaneously. The human ship disappeared behind walls of fire and explosions. The visual screens couldn't penetrate the chaos. Sensors showed nothing but energy readings off the scale. For 5 full minutes, the Kreth fleet poured fire into that single spot in space, never stopping, never letting up. Ammunition warnings began flashing on multiple ships. They'd expended more ordnance in 5 minutes than most ships used in entire campaigns. Cease fire, Vecrus finally ordered. Sensor report. The weapons fire stopped. The flames dissipated. The smoke cleared. And the retribution was still there. Not only still there but closer. It had actually advanced during the bombardment. Its shields shimmered briefly with a faint blue light, then faded. Not collapsed. Not damaged. Just turning off because they weren't needed anymore. Shields at full strength, the sensor officer reported, his voice shaking. No hull damage detected. Commander, it's like we didn't even touch them. Then the retribution fired back. Just once. A single broadside from weapons that glowed white-hot. 17 separate beams of concentrated energy lanced out, each one targeting a different Kreth warship. The accuracy was perfect. The power was overwhelming. 17 Kreth warships simply ceased to exist. Vaporized. Not destroyed or disabled. Erased. One moment they were there. The next moment, there was only expanding clouds of superheated gas where proud vessels and brave crews had been. The remaining Kreth fleet hung in space, shocked into silence. And the retribution kept coming. Panic flooded through every Kreth command channel. Vecrus watched in horror as his carefully planned defensive formation collapsed. Ships broke ranks and scattered in all directions, desperately trying to find cover where none existed. Some fled toward the station. Others tried to put distance between themselves and the human vessel. A few just stopped moving entirely, their crews frozen in shock. Reform the line. Vecrus shouted into the communications array. Hold your positions. We still outnumber them 30-1. But his words fell on deaf ears. He could hear the fear in the voices responding over the channels. Captains who had served for decades sounded like raw recruits facing their first battle. And maybe they were. None of them had ever faced an enemy like this. An enemy that could erase 17 ships with a single volley. An enemy that treated their most powerful weapons like annoying insects. How is this possible? His tactical officer whispered, staring at the sensor displays. Their technology shouldn't be this advanced. They were isolated for 200 years. How did they get so far ahead of us? Vecrus had no answer. He watched the retribution move through his scattered fleet like a shark through a school of fish. It wasn't rushing. It wasn't chasing. It was just advancing steadily, deliberately, like it had all the time in the world. Because it did. Nothing they had could stop it. A priority alert flashed on his command console. Kreth Intelligence Command sending an emergency data package. Vecrus opened it with trembling claws. The file contained recovered documents from the human wars 2 centuries ago. Intelligence officers had been digging through ancient archives, looking for anything that might help. What they found made Vecrus's blood run cold. The central document was titled Human Naval Doctrine, Peace Through Superior Firepower. As Vecrus read, he began to understand the fundamental difference between Kreth thinking and human thinking. It was a difference that might cost them everything. The Kreth built ships for specific purposes. Scout ships for exploration. Trade vessels for commerce. Warships for combat. Each designed to excel at its role. This was logical. This was efficient. This was how every civilized species operated. Humans didn't think that way. Humans built every single ship as if it would one day have to fight for its survival against overwhelming odds. Even their cargo vessels carried weapons. Even their medical ships had armor. And their warships? Their warships were built to fight entire fleets alone and win. The doctrine explained something called combined arms warfare. Most species had abandoned this concept centuries ago as unnecessarily complicated. You pick your best weapon system and build around it. Simple. Clean. Effective. Humans used everything at once. Point defense cannons that could track thousands of targets simultaneously. Missiles that could think and adapt. Energy weapons with multiple firing modes. Kinetic weapons that hit like meteorites. Electronic warfare systems that could blind enemy sensors. They synchronized all of it into one overwhelming assault that came at you from every angle at once. The Retribution demonstrated this perfectly. Vecrus watched through his sensors as 3 Kreth destroyers attempted a coordinated attack from different vectors. Smart tactics. Good execution. It should have worked. The human ship's point defense systems activated. Thousands of small cannons tracked and destroyed incoming missiles with casual efficiency. Not one missile reached the hull. At the same time, the main guns rotated smoothly and fired. 2 of the destroyers exploded. The third tried to run, but a different weapon system engaged. Something that looked like a magnetic accelerator launched a projectile that moved so fast the sensors barely registered it before it punched completely through the destroyer from bow to stern. 3 ships destroyed in under 10 seconds. No wasted movements. No dramatic maneuvers. Just efficient, calculated destruction. More ships died as Vecrus watched helplessly. The Retribution's weapons seemed endless. Every time the Kreth tried a new tactic, the humans had a counter ready. Tried to overwhelm them with missiles? Point defense systems destroyed them all. Tried energy weapons? Their shields absorbed everything. Tried to get close for ramming? Long-range weapons picked them off before they could get within range. "Commander, they're hailing us," his communications officer reported, voice shaking. "Put them through," Vecrus said. Maybe he could buy time. Maybe he could negotiate. Maybe there was still a way out of this nightmare. A woman appeared on his screen. She looked middle-aged, with weathered skin and lines around her eyes that spoke of long years in space. Her uniform was dark blue and functional, with minimal decoration. Her gray hair was pulled back in a simple style. But it was her eyes that caught Vecrus's attention. Cold blue eyes that looked at him without hate, without anger, just with complete professional detachment. Like he was a problem to be solved, not an enemy to be defeated. "Captain Ellen Moss," she said simply. "You're Commander Vecrus, correct?" "I am," Vecrus said quickly. "Captain Moss, we wish to negotiate. Surely we can reach some kind of—" "Your 47 minutes expired 6 minutes ago," Moss interrupted, her voice calm and matter-of-fact. "I gave you time to evacuate non-combatants. You chose to fight instead. You chose to keep civilians on a military station while preparing for battle. That was your choice. Now we finish this." "Wait please," Vecrus began, but the channel closed. The screen went dark. The Retribution's engines flared brighter. The massive ship accelerated directly toward Valen Station, cutting through the scattered remains of the Kreth fleet like they weren't even there. Ships that tried to intercept were swatted aside or destroyed. Ships that ran were ignored. The human vessel had a target now, and nothing was going to stop it from reaching that target. Vecrus gripped his command console and watched death approach. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Kreth Dominion was about to learn what it felt like to lose. The Retribution breached Valen Station's defensive perimeter, moving at a speed that should have been impossible for something its size. Vecrus braced for the devastating blow that would tear his station apart. Every sensor showed the human ship's weapons charging. This was it. This was the end. But the massive blast never came. Instead, precision strikes lanced out from the Retribution's weapons arrays. One beam hit the military command bunker on the station's northern section. Another took out the primary ammunition depot. A third destroyed the main warship construction berth. Each strike was surgical, calculated, devastating to military targets but carefully avoiding anything else. They're sparing civilians," Vecrus's tactical officer said, his voice filled with disbelief. He pulled up damage reports on his console. "Commander, look at this. Every single hit is on military infrastructure. They're not touching residential areas. Not touching the commercial district. Not even hitting civilian power generators." Vecrus stared at the damage assessment displays. The pattern was undeniable. The humans were deliberately avoiding non-combatant casualties. They had the power to destroy the entire station in seconds, but they were choosing not to. They were being precise, careful, almost merciful. It made no sense. The reports said humans were violent and aggressive. The reports said they were too dangerous for civilized space. But this was the most restrained use of overwhelming force Vecris had ever witnessed. Then an idea struck him. A desperate, terrible idea. But it might be their only chance. Activate the World Breaker, Vecris commanded. His officers turned to look at him, horror on their faces. Commander, that weapon? I know what it is, Vecris snapped. Activate it now. Deep in the station's core, ancient systems came to life. The World Breaker was the Kreth Dominion's ultimate weapon, kept secret from the Galactic Council. It was a planet killer, powerful enough to crack worlds apart. And it was powered by something no civilized species should use: enslaved psychics from conquered species. 43 beings with extraordinary mental abilities, chained in neural interfaces, their minds linked and amplified to create devastating power. They'd been prisoners for years, some for decades. Kept alive only to serve as living batteries for a weapon that could end worlds. The World Breaker began charging. Energy readings climbed rapidly. The psychics screamed in pain as the weapon drew from their minds. Vecris ignored their suffering. He'd learned to ignore it years ago. Captain Moss, Vecris broadcast on all channels. Stand down immediately or we will activate the World Breaker. It will destroy everything in this sector, including your ship. Stand down now. There was a pause. Then Captain Moss's voice came through, still calm, still controlled. You shouldn't have shown us that. Before Vecris could respond, the Retribution launched something. Not weapons. Boarding pods. 20 small craft detached from the main ship and accelerated toward the station at incredible speed. They were moving too fast, coming in too hot. They'd smash against the station's hull and everyone inside would die. Except they didn't smash. At the last possible second, each pod fired reverse thrusters and magnetic clamps. They latched onto the station's exterior with precision that suggested the humans knew exactly where they were going. Then the cutting began. Vecris pulled up internal security cameras, trying to see what was happening. The feeds showed humans in advanced armor breaching through the outer hull, moving through corridors in tight formation. Each soldier was covered head to toe in dark armor that seemed to absorb light. Their helmets had no visible faceplates, just smooth surfaces that somehow let them see perfectly. Security teams, intercept those intruders, Vecris ordered. He watched as Kreth soldiers rushed to engage. The humans moved like ghosts, fast and fluid. They didn't charge blindly. They advanced with practiced efficiency, checking corners, covering each other, communicating through silent signals. When they encountered resistance, they responded with overwhelming force but incredible precision. Every shot hit its target. Nothing was wasted. But they weren't killing everyone. Vecris watched in confusion as the humans bypassed several security checkpoints where soldiers had taken defensive positions. They were heading somewhere specific. Following a path through the station like they'd studied the layout for years. They were heading for the World Breaker chamber. Stop them. Vecris screamed into his communicator. All units converge on Sector 7. Protect the weapon at all costs. The lead human had a call sign painted on his shoulder, Wolf. He moved with practiced economy, each action purposeful and precise. When his team reached the World Breaker chamber, they found 50 Kreth soldiers waiting in prepared defensive positions. The battle lasted 90 seconds. The humans used grenades that somehow stunned without killing, weapons that fired with pinpoint accuracy, and tactics that turned the Kreth's defensive positions into traps. When the smoke cleared, most of the Kreth soldiers were unconscious. The few who resisted more aggressively were put down with lethal efficiency, but even then the humans only shot to neutralize threats. Then Wolf's team reached the psychics. The enslaved beings were chained in neural chairs, their faces twisted in agony as the World Breaker drew power from their minds. Some were barely conscious. All were suffering. Kreth guards, execute the prisoners. A Kreth commander ordered over the internal communications. Don't let the humans take them alive. Kreth guards moved toward the psychics with weapons raised. They never got the chance to fire. Wolf's team moved faster, stepping between the guards and their intended victims. The fight was brief and brutal. The guards died. The psychics lived. Wolf approached the neural interface controls. His armored fingers moved across the console with surprising gentleness. One by one the psychics were released from their chains. The World Breaker powered down, its terrible energy dissipating harmlessly. One psychic, a female from a subjugated species, collapsed as her chains released. Wolf caught her before she hit the floor. Through his helmet speakers, his voice was surprisingly gentle. You're safe now. We've got you. She looked up at him with wide eyes. Then she looked at her Kreth overseer, cowering in the corner. Her voice was barely a whisper, but every person in that room heard it. They saved us. Who are the real monsters here? Within 30 minutes of breaching the station, the human team had disabled the world breaker and freed all 43 psychics. They'd done it without killing a single non-combatant. Without causing any collateral damage. With a precision that should have been impossible. And Vecris finally understood what the old reports had tried to warn them about. Humans weren't just technologically superior. They were better at war itself. Better at fighting. Better at tactics. Better at knowing when to use overwhelming force and when to show restraint. The Kreth Dominion had made a terrible mistake 200 years ago. And now they were paying the price. The retribution stopped. After all the destruction, after all the chaos, the massive human warship simply held position directly above Valen Station. Its weapons powered down. Its engines idled. It just hung there in space waiting. Vecris stood on his damaged command bridge, surrounded by sparking consoles and emergency lighting. Half his fleet was destroyed. His station was crippled. His ultimate weapon was disabled. And the humans hadn't even taken significant damage. He expected them to finish the job. To destroy what remained. To make an example of the Kreth Dominion. Instead, the retribution began broadcasting. Not just to the station. Not just to the sector. On every frequency, across every communication channel, reaching into Kreth space and beyond. The signal was so powerful it overrode local communications networks. Emergency channels. Military frequencies. Even civilian entertainment broadcasts. Every screen in the sector flickered. Then Captain Ellen Moss appeared. She sat in what looked like the Retribution's command center. Behind her, Vecris could see other humans working at various stations, calm and professional. No celebration. No triumph. Just people doing their jobs. Moss herself looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes. Her uniform was crisp but worn, like she'd been wearing it for days. "My name is Captain Ellen Moss of the United Human Space Navy," she began, her voice clear and steady. 200 years ago, a Kreth patrol encountered a human diplomatic vessel in neutral space. The humans aboard that ship came in peace. They came with proposals for trade and friendship. They came hoping to establish good relations with your people. She paused, her expression hardening. Your patrol commander decided they looked threatening. He didn't issue warnings. He didn't attempt communication. He simply opened fire and murdered 37 human diplomats, including Ambassador Richard Blake. When we asked for justice, when we demanded accountability, the Galactic Council sealed us away rather than address the crime. They called us too dangerous, too aggressive, too violent for civilized space. Moss leaned back in her chair. So we prepared. We watched from behind our barrier. We listened to transmissions. We monitored your activities. And we waited. We waited for you to prove that the Council was right to protect you from us. We waited for you to become better. Her voice grew colder. You didn't? Instead, we detected something that we couldn't ignore. You were enslaving psychics. Beings with extraordinary abilities, chained and tortured, forced to power weapons of mass destruction. Sentient creatures treated as batteries. We decided it was time to remind the galaxy what humans do to slavers and murderers. The camera angle widened, showing the devastation visible through the Retribution's viewport. The wreckage of Kreth warships drifted in space, twisted metal catching starlight. We could have annihilated everything in minutes. We have weapons that could have turned this entire sector into radioactive dust. We could have glassed your worlds, destroyed your infrastructure, killed millions. The technology exists. The capability is there. Moss gestured at the destruction. We didn't. Every strike you saw today was calculated. Every shot was aimed. We disabled military targets and avoided civilians. We gave you warning. We gave you time to evacuate non-combatants. You chose to fight instead. Even then we showed restraint. This wasn't genocide. This was a message. Humanity doesn't forget crimes against sentient life. She stood up, moving closer to the camera. Here are your terms and they are not negotiable. 1. Release all enslaved species immediately. Every psychic, every prisoner, every being held against their will. 2. The Kreth Dominion will stand trial for war crimes before an independent tribunal. 3. Accept human observers throughout your territory to ensure compliance with basic sentient rights. Moss's expression became stone. Or we visit every Kreth world. And next time we won't be gentle. Next time we won't give warnings. Next time we won't show mercy. You have one standard galactic week to begin compliance. After that we come back. And we bring friends. The transmission cut to exterior cameras showing space around the Retribution. In the darkness, running lights flickered on. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Human warships decloaking, appearing from nowhere, surrounding the sector. They'd been there the whole time, invisible and waiting. The Retribution hadn't come alone. It had just come first. The transmission ended. Silence fell across the sector. Vecris stared at his blank screen, processing what he'd just witnessed. The humans had an entire fleet out there. They could have destroyed everything without warning. But they sent one ship first. One ship to make a point. One ship to give them a chance. Across the galaxy, reactions came swiftly. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions. Some species demanded humanity be quarantined again, more securely this time. They called the humans dangerous, aggressive, unpredictable. Everything the Council had said 200 years ago. But other voices rose too. Species that had been conquered by the Kreth. Beings who had lost family members to Dominion aggression. Former slaves who remembered what it felt like to be property. They called the humans something different. They called them liberators. On worlds throughout the sector, enslaved beings looked up at the stars and whispered a single word, hope. In Kreth space, military commanders reviewed footage of the battle and realized they'd been given a gift. The humans could have ended them. Instead, they'd been taught a lesson. Now they had to decide, learn from it or die refusing to. And in human space, in shipyards that had been building in secret for 2 centuries, 40 more battleships finished their final system checks. Their crews boarded. Their captains received sealed orders. The Retribution had opened the door. Now humanity was walking through. The galaxy was learning several hard lessons. You don't cage humanity and expect them to forgive. You don't commit crimes and expect them to forget. You don't enslave the innocent where humans can see and expect them to look away. Because humans do remember. Humans prepare. Humans plan. And when humans decide to act, when they decide enough is enough, nothing survives except what they choose to spare. The Retribution powered up its drives and began moving away from Valen Station. Its mission was complete. The message was delivered. Now came the hard part, seeing if the galaxy would listen. Behind it, in the wreckage and the silence, Commander Vecris made a decision. He activated his personal transmitter and sent a message to Dominion High Command. Just 3 words, comply with everything. The age of Kreth dominance was over. The age of human accountability had begun. And the galaxy would never be the same.